Hey everybody, welcome back to another gun guide. Today we're going to talk about the Cord. It is a fabulous assault rifle, blistering fast rate of fire. That being said, the muzzle velocity, it's okay. Definitely on the slow side for the assault rifles. And then obviously you can see on your screen there's quite a damage drop off as it gets further away. The developers really intended this to be kind of like a bridge between an assault rifle down into an SMG. It's really good for close range. So that being said, let's talk about some of the builds that I use with the Cord. This is my kind of go-to one. I definitely recommend this particular one. If you find yourself moving a lot while aiming down sights, then you're going to want to equip the blue laser. If you're going to go with the blue laser, you definitely want to pick the long suppressor to reduce that recoil buildup over time, because you can basically full auto this thing. That being said, use the heavy barrel because that's also going to add some support to the full auto. Get yourself a pretty reasonable grip, and then go with your 30 fast mag because you reload quite a bit. Now, if you're going to be a lot more disciplined in terms of not moving while shooting, you definitely can drop off the blue laser. Uh, you can go up to like hollow points on there, but I didn't notice a big difference in terms of the number of times I was like, able to pull off a headshot in this particular mode. So I left with a standard, and then you definitely can go up to the light and suppressor. And in fact, what makes it even better would be jumping up to like one of these different stubby grips to give you some not only increased support with the recoil if you do need to do full auto at like a medium range, but also brings your aim down sights time lower so you can aim down sights even faster. So that's another way you can go with this particular build. I don't notice a ton of difference to it, so I'm fine going with the long suppressor and then keeping the blue laser. But if you don't like having the blue laser because it gives you away, then you do that. That being said, you can make a hipfire version of this gun. Let me show you a quick thing about the hipfire. You can go with the standard green laser if you want. If you're going to be doing a mixture of hip firing and aim down sights movement, then you might want to drop to a lower grip so that you can jump from the green laser up to the more expensive blue laser that gives you the hip fire support as well. When I play the Cord this way, I don't really need that. Obviously, you need to have the heavy. And then for any particular muzzle you can use because you're so close, I would definitely recommend keeping something like the brake. The converter makes you jump really high up in the air, like straight up and down, so I don't use that. So I use the brake. If I need to go for the suppressor, then I'll drop down to, like the hand stop, for example, and then grab my CBQ suppressor, and then at least I would stay off the radar. So it depends for you if you want to use the Cord that way. It's pretty decent. It's going to feel more like an SMG in that route. That being said, you can do another fun thing with the Cord would be to put it in burst fire mode and then add the match trigger on the back end of it. I have a lot of success with it. It's fun. It's definitely challenging. If you're going to use the gun in this particular way, let me encourage you to put a binding for switching fire modes between full auto, semi-auto, and single shot, like onto your mouse or something like that, so you can quickly flip between the modes, especially if you're playing something like Conquest or Escalation, where sometimes you're fighting long range and then very quickly you're going to have to shoot at somebody close range. So put the gun in burst fire mode, grab the match trigger, and then obviously the long suppressor to save you some points. Then it has a standard heavy barrel, and then grab yourself. I use the canted stubby just because I want some recoil reduction and I want to bring that aim down sights time. But everything kind of centers on that match trigger. Unfortunately, you don't have enough points left over to get the 30 fast unless you want to drop out of the stubby and go down to the vertical, and then you can jump up to get the 30 fast. I don't need the 36 rounds, especially not in the burst fire mode, but now, let's jump into some of the raw data around how the different grips and barrels, etc., affect the gun, and then we'll jump into some of the different builds and how they can be comboed. And what you're basically going to see is the Cord is so good from 0 to 15-ish meters. You really don't need any attachments. All the attachments are really going to do is just accent what it already does well to keep that recoil under control at that 10 to 15 meter mark. So let's dive in. All right, so here are the different grips and barrels you can put on the Cord. So if we start from 10 meters with no grip whatsoever, then we do 15 meters, and then beyond 30, so 31 meters is that top row. And we go from a no grip whatsoever to the slight recoil, then moderate, et cetera, all the way on down. Even the base recoil pattern, not too bad from 10 even up to 15 meters. It seems like even putting any type of grip on it, as long as you stay within that 15 meters, it does a pretty decent job on full auto. But once you get out to like 31 beyond, you really need to have like the biggest, heaviest grip, that 35-point grip, really to do full auto at 31 meters to really keep the spread fairly tight. And then we can go into the actual barrels themselves and think about, it's like, here is the base fire pattern again for reference, and then getting just the cheapest brake. And then we've got the double port brake, then the linear comp, etc., all the way on down to the two different suppressors. Just to note that the long suppressor and the light suppressor do essentially the same thing. So it seems like when you think about barrels, that linear comp definitely throws it kind of, in my opinion, a little bit worse than the base recoil pattern, but I don't think it's really worth it for the amount of points that you're spending on it. But it seems like that double ported brake, especially when you're up close, is pretty reasonable. Let's get out to 15. It is a little bit funky. So it seems like the light suppressor seems to be the way to go. To put it on the end, I did put the gun in semi-automatic and then put on the match trigger, just so you can see kind of a frame of reference. Again, if you were like 10 to 15, that match trigger with no other grip, no other barrel, does pretty darn well. So if you can, quickly tap fire it. Once you get on to like 31 meters, yes, the match trigger does make a fair good difference in as close to full auto as you can get in that semi-automatic mode and just like rapid firing. So those are the different barrels for a little bit of a comparison from 10, 15, and then 31 meters out. All right, let's talk about some different combinations you can go with. So here is the base fire pattern where you're just pulling straight down on the mouse from 10, from 15, and then 31 meters. And then if you go kind of like full recoil control in terms of the lightened suppressor and then the strongest grip, that's what your fire pattern looks like from 10, 15, and 31. If you want to go from the balanced, so I put on just a lightened suppressor and then the middle of the road grip and then the heavy barrel. It seems to be like a pretty strong contender for how well it can keep the spread of bullets. And all you're doing is pulling straight down on the mouse. And then obviously kind of like a very, very balanced build where we've got the blue laser, we have a standard suppressor, we got the heavy barrel, and we've got the middle of the road grip. So it seems like really the cord, it does really well kind of all on its own. All that you're really doing in terms of putting on grips and barrels would be really the long distance shooting. You're able to tighten up that spread with the heavy barrel and the lightened suppressor. And the grip, definitely when you get into that 15-meter range, the grip seems to be paying off a fair bit. But you've got a lot of room to work with this particular gun. Okay, so here's a bit of a comparison of the different builds. Let's start with hipfire. Here is the base hipfire. If we're going to do the hipfire build, it makes a pretty massive difference, that really expensive blue laser. When it comes to the different builds that I run, which is kind of like my balanced, then we've got the hipfire, and then we have a bit of that long distance using the match trigger and rapid fire mode instead of the full auto. Again, when I'm doing full auto for these first two columns, it seems like both the balance build and the hipfire build are fairly lethal when you get into the 10 meters to 15 meters. Once you're going beyond 30, so this is at 31 meters, it does pay off quite a bit to get into that burst fire mode, especially if you got the match trigger, etc. But overall, I don't see a massive difference between the 0 to 15-ish range between the three, like a little bit for the hipfire build, but it definitely is controllable. All right, so there you have it. That's a little bit of the reasoning behind why I chose the different attachments that I have chosen and how I particularly think about building this gun. Between the light and suppressor and long suppressor, they're basically the same thing. It is so easy, just kind of pull gently down on the mouse or joystick if you're using controller. And then if you find yourself like, hey, I'm going to be, bobbing and weaving and ducking and dodging, then yeah, go ahead and keep your blue laser on there. Just know that it's kind of giving away your position when you're running that. So hope you like this video. I'll be back with some more.